Okay, good morning. This is Richard Hsu, host of Hsu Untied. This morning, I'm very pleased to have with me as my guest Joseph Halloum, who's a partner at King Spalding. Joseph, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Richard. Appreciate the time.
So, Joseph, why don't you start by telling me why you wanted to go to law school in the first place?
Sure. It actually starts back to uh, my adolescent years. When I was a kid, my family had always owned a small business.
Mhm.
We had a grocery store, and over the years, we've really developed a following in the neighborhood. And there was a big box retailer that was looking to move into the area.
Mhm.
And it kind of took us by surprise because there really was no room or, frankly, expectation for a development for a big box retailer to move in, which we knew instantly would have killed our business. And so my dad had hired a lawyer to help us advocate against this retailer to come in. And it was seeing the power and influence of advocacy, of knowing the law from this lawyer who saved our business,
Hmm.
frankly, our livelihood, that inspired me to look at law.
Hmm.
And when I was an undergrad at Berkeley, I again had an influence from an interaction with a Silicon Valley legend in the legal field, Mario Rosati, who's one of the named partners for Wilson Sonsini,
Mhm.
who came in and spoke to a class of mine in the engineering program
Hmm.
at Berkeley about his work helping startups, entrepreneurs um, make successful businesses for themselves and what he as a lawyer did. And I thought that was one of the coolest things. And
Hmm.
so
Interesting.
it certainly reinforced the idea for me of um, there's something to this law that feels pretty cool if you really hone your skills like these individuals did that I was able to see and was exposed to as a kid.
Yeah. So when you went to law school, did you know at that point you were going to be a transactional lawyer, or did you ever get
No.
the chance to dabble in litigation or anything like that?
So look, everything you see on TV, it's a cool litigator, hot shot that like one ups the other person in a courtroom. I did have an inclination to be on the transactional side, but I think there's such a bias when people think about lawyers that you're going in the courtroom that I did want to try it out.
Uh-huh.
What discouraged me was one of the assignments as a first year law student was to go into a federal court and see what the experience is with the way that lawyers are interacting, what the judge says and does, legal procedure. And I don't know if it's just the irony of it, but I decided to attend the courtroom for a well-known judge in the area by the name of Judge Alsup.
Hmm.
And Judge Alsup is, after I went to the courtroom, I found out that he's actually someone that's a bit of a maverick in terms of judges who, takes a certain position on things. And when I was in his courtroom, he scared the hell out of me in the way that he was really tearing into the lawyers in his courtroom who were not prepared. And
Wow.
all I could think is, how can I do this day in, day out, year after year, being in a courtroom and getting chewed out by a judge?
Funny.
Um, Look, I could understand being in that courtroom, even as a law student, that these lawyers didn't seem all that good. They weren't prepared. They were, shooting from the hip. But it was certainly an eye opener that I really don't
Funny.
want to be in a courtroom in front of a judge. And
And
so
you and you were just observing it, right? You were just
I was
observing as
Yeah, no, I was observing it. The interesting thing is he then turned like who are you over there, sitting in my courtroom? And so I'm sure there was a little bit of quiver in my voice as I, tell him who I am and that I'm from law school looking to just observe. But he's someone that was an interesting person that I think uh, steered me the direction I did
Yeah. So he inspired you to become a transactional lawyer in a weird kind of way.
in a weird kind of way. But he is an interesting guy, and one of the things that I've learned from a friend who um, clerked for him is he asks an interview question that to this day I still carry when I'm interviewing associates,
Yeah.
which is, what do you do for your country? And
Huh.
I think it's a
Interesting.
profound question. It's a bit unexpected for an
Yeah.
associate or a law student to get, but I think it's very telling about a person's character
Yeah. Yeah.
and how they
Interesting.
respond to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Super. Well, so what kind of transactional lawyer did you decide to become? Did you decide to do a startup? Did you decide what did you just now that you've made that decision, what kind of transactional lawyer did you pursue?
So I'm an M&A lawyer, and I do general corporate work as well, but I work less with startups that are not late stage in terms of the pre-IPO. So I'm basically working with these successful startups that have a business with cash generated who can afford to obviously pay the high legal fees that lawyers these days require. And so I tend to work with tech and life science companies
Hmm.
here in Silicon Valley,
Hmm.
and private equity firms that focus on the tech software
Mhm,
space.
mhm. Well, what led you into that field? Because you said you were influenced by Mario Rosati. You didn't want to go to Wilson
Yeah.
Sonsini and follow in his footsteps and work with startups.
You know, what I found as I figured out the transactional side of the practice, on the startup side, you tend to do a lot more, I think, housekeeping, a lot of cap table work. And what I really enjoyed was one of my first deals was for Yahoo when it was having um, dispute with Alibaba regarding one of its businesses. And what I enjoyed was doing deals, finding solutions between parties. And it was the deal work that I think drew me
Hmm.
more than the cool tech or the cool product that a startup was doing. Where frankly the lawyers maybe do less in terms of helping bring to the market, as opposed to a deal where two companies coming together or one buying a business line. You could see the work that I'm doing materialize into something bigger for a company.
Yeah, interesting. So you mentioned you do tech and life sciences. Is that an even split, or is it more tech, more life sciences? Give me a feel for the kind of industry
Yeah,
breakdown.
definitely more on the tech side. I'd say about 80-20,
Hmm.
80% tech. And it tends to be these days AI specific. Everyone wants to put AI in their product, and it's somewhat of I think a time is of the essence that folks have had. And with the deals that I have going on right now, three deals, um, uh, 3 out of 4 deals that are all AI specific. And so it's certainly in vogue right now, and I think it's not going to stop for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, totally. So is your M&A work tend to be more on the sell side of the startups getting sold to a big company, or are you more on the buy side with the serial kind of acquirer practice?
So it tends to be on the serial acquirer side. I think there is a deal that I'm doing on the sell side, but for the most part, it tends to be buyers. And I think the cool thing about that is you're then part of the tactical, the strategy aspect to their growth plans and how one acquisition fits in with the prior acquisition that you did for a client. And
Mhm.
so it's nice to kind of have that. that ownership and playing a role in the story of a company. And so I tend to try to do more of that work than on the sell side.
Yeah. Any particular buyers you've represented serially?
Yes, one would be ServiceNow,
Mhm.
for example, who is big in the area. I think one of the early adopters of AI. They've been historical client of mine. And there are a couple others, but those are a little bit more private, and I'd have to um, not disclose those. But
Totally. So you mentioned you also do some private equity. Is that a big part of your practice or a smaller part of it, or what is, and how do you compare that with
yeah,
more of the strategic kind of M&A?
so it is a bit of a smaller part of the practice. I think that's more of just a function of the access to capital
Mhm.
right now.
Mhm.
Bigger companies, it's a case of, them having cash on the balance sheet, wanting to get technology into their current business line as opposed to platform acquisitions. But it really is a function of the access to capital. And I think as um, the coming year plays in, folks are expecting, hoping that more deals are going to get done on the private equity side that'll help bolster things.
Yeah. Now you mentioned you really like the deal work. Have you ever thought about, doing something that, like going in house or actually becoming doing the deal from the business side? Is that something that ever has ever attracted you?
You know, it's certain there's certainly an appeal to it. I think part of what I love, it's less about that and more of what I love is that I get a look into a few different client companies.
Mm.
And to me, that diversity of what they have going on is an interesting side that would be hard to want to let go of.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you recently made a move to King and Spalding. Tell me a little bit about why you made that move and why the platform was attractive to you and what you hope to how does that hope to shape your practice going forward?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So, yes, I recently moved to King and Spalding, and historically, King and Spalding has not really been a significant player in the Bay Area doing transactional work. But over the years, one thing that I had learned and seen, and frankly, working alongside with lawyers at King and Spalding, is that the firm has very specific subject matter experts
Mm.
that I've always called upon or engaged as co-counsel, whether it's in the FDA space, the insurance space, um, or otherwise, where the firm has these experts that I do not see firms generally in the Bay Area, the indigenous law firms or the New York firms that have offices here really have that capability. And so um, when the opportunity came to me to join and help lead a practice out here in Silicon Valley, um, I it was hard to pass up. And I thought about my existing clients. I thought about the opportunities that I've not been able to pursue. And there's an element to being the new kid on the block that folks don't think about. But um, it has, in the 3 months that I've been at the firm, um, really translated in a big way, with clients that I've been able to connect with and actually begin doing work for that frankly I'm a bit surprised at how quick the uptake has been from folks that I've reached out to and that I've known for years.
Yeah. Now you mentioned you became, you decided to become a lawyer very early on. Did you ever consider any other career? You never really did.
You know, I never did, but I do see many of my friends that I've known from my undergrad days that opted to go to the Facebooks or the Googles of the world and be one of the early on employees that have done very well for themselves. I think there's an element too. I do think about, wow, if I just went on the company side and joined one of these companies, I'd probably be kicking back with good stock in my portfolio.
Yeah. Well, Joseph, this has been a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate your taking the time to share your story. Congratulations on all your success, and thanks for taking the time to share it with me.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.
This is Richard Hsu and Joseph Halloum. Thanks.